For most of the summer, every Jalen Duren report pointed toward Detroit keeping him, Sacramento potentially getting him in a sign-and trade, or Duren waiting until next summer to test free agency. The New York Knicks were nowhere in that conversation. Then, at 2:44 this afternoon, Shams Charania dropped the update that completely changed the picture. Jalen Duren was traded from the Detroit Pistons to the New York Knicks, the reigning NBA champions. What makes this even crazier is that Leon Rose's front office had apparently been monitoring Detroit's internal situation long before the public rumors ever started. The Knicks weren't suddenly jumping into the Duren sweepstakes after seeing the Sacramento reports. They had reportedly been tracking Detroit's debate over whether Oscar Thompson's extension should take priority over Duren's for more than a month. That detail completely changes how this trade looks. Once Detroit decided that getting the most value for Duren now was better than letting the situation carry into the regular season, New York was ready to move. Rose reportedly came in with a package involving meaningful draft compensation and matching salary, and that framework appealed to Detroit more than what Sacramento had been discussing. The agreement is reportedly in principle and finalized, which means the Knicks got involved before most of the league even knew there was a real opportunity. And that's the part that stands out most from Shams' report. New York's pursuit apparently started before the entire public rumor cycle surrounding Duren even took off. While everyone else was watching Detroit, Sacramento, and the possibility of free agency, the Knicks were quietly positioning themselves in the background. That is a completely different story from simply reacting to the reports that everybody else was seeing. Even the way the news broke added to the surprise. Scott Van Pelt was in the middle of a SportsCenter cut-in about Detroit's roster situation heading toward training camp when the broadcast was suddenly interrupted with breaking NBA news. The coverage immediately went to Shams, and the announcement was the exact outcome almost nobody had been seriously discussing. Then, just 22 minutes later, Jalen Brunson posted something that put the Knicks' remaining roster needs into perspective. Brunson said they've been saying it since winning the championship. They needed a legitimate rim runner who could protect the paint and finish over the defense without needing plays designed specifically for him. And that sounds like a pretty direct description of the type of player New York just added. Brunson's message makes it pretty clear that this wasn't some last-minute reaction to Duren becoming available. He said they've been talking about needing this type of player since the moment they won the championship, which means the gap was already on the organization's radar. And that's what makes the Knicks landing Duren so surprising. The entire public conversation had Sacramento positioned as the likely sign-and-trade destination, while New York wasn't even being treated as a serious possibility. So how does the reigning champion suddenly end up with him?
The answer is that the public rumor cycle doesn't always reflect what disciplined front offices are actually doing behind the scenes. The teams we hear about most are often the teams whose negotiations become visible through leaks, while a front office like New York's can quietly monitor an opportunity for months without becoming part of the conversation. Detroit's Duren versus Thompson debate was ultimately about maintaining long-term financial flexibility rather than committing to a specific trade partner. That meant once Detroit decided it was time to move Duren, the destination came down to whoever could present the strongest offer at that exact moment. And that's where New York's quiet preparation mattered. Once you look at what Duren actually adds to this championship roster, the move starts making a lot more sense. There are 3 reasons Shams sounded so confident about this, and the first one is pretty straightforward. Even a championship team can benefit from another efficient rim runner who provides insurance and rotation depth behind Karl-Anthony Towns. Those small additions are exactly the kind of moves that can separate a team capable of repeating from one that simply had one great postseason. Duren had a difficult postseason, but he's still one of the league's most efficient interior finishers. He shot over 65% from the field across the regular season, giving New York a front-court option that can create value without demanding a huge role. Then there's the tactical fit with Mike Brown. Brown's defense uses aggressive pressure to funnel drivers toward the paint anchor, so having another legitimate rim protector behind Towns gives the coaching staff more flexibility with the center minutes. That becomes especially important across an 82-game season and a full playoff run, because Brown can keep Towns fresh without sacrificing the defensive identity whenever the starting center needs a break. Before we get to the third reason, Knicks fans, tell me what you think about adding Duren as insurance behind Towns. Does that feel like smart depth for another championship run, or was this roster already good enough without it? Now, here's the third reason: the timeline. Shams said Leon Rose's front office had been tracking Detroit's internal Duren situation for more than a month before the public speculation even started. That means New York was prepared for the opportunity before everyone else knew there was an opportunity. Stephen A. Smith, who's a huge Knicks fan, was still stunned by how quietly this supposedly happened. After all, Sacramento had been viewed as the frontrunner for months, so seeing New York suddenly land Duren without the usual leaks naturally raised questions. But Rose's approach has been built around patience and making calculated roster moves instead of chasing whatever name is getting the most attention. Duren also wasn't trying to force his way out of Detroit. Penny Hardaway said staying with Detroit long-term was very important to him, so this wasn't a player publicly demanding a trade. Instead, Detroit's internal priorities changed, and Duren ended up somewhere he hadn't specifically pushed for. Now he enters New York with immediate expectations, joining a championship team and a situation he never personally chose.
Duren is only 22, but now he has to enter a championship environment and prove himself after a postseason that exposed some real concerns. His regular season was a completely different story though. After making the All-NBA third team, Duren became eligible for a maximum extension following a breakout year where he averaged 19.5 points and 10.5 rebounds while shooting 65% from the field across 70 games. Detroit won 60 games and finished as the Eastern Conference's top seed, which made Duren a legitimate max extension candidate. But the contract talks never got close to where Duren's camp wanted them. Detroit reportedly offered somewhere around $35 to $38 million per year, while Duren's side was looking for the 30% maximum salary. Then the playoffs changed the conversation. His numbers dropped to 10.2 points and 8.5 rebounds over 14 starts, and things hit a low point when Detroit left him on the bench for an entire overtime period against Cleveland in the second round. That kind of postseason moment can make teams hesitate before committing major money, even when the regular season production is clearly there. The restricted free agency rules also made the situation harder to solve. Any team trying to sign Duren had to know Detroit could simply match the offer, which is why reported interest from teams like the Lakers never turned into an actual offer sheet before Los Angeles moved on to Walker Kessler. So instead of resolving through a normal offer sheet, the situation ultimately required a trade. And then there's Ausar Thompson. Thompson became extension eligible with his own October deadline approaching, while Detroit reportedly viewed him as the better long-term two-way investment. That created a serious financial conflict because giving Duren the money he wanted would have limited what Detroit could eventually give Thompson. Leon Rose's approach here fits the way this Knicks front office has operated throughout the championship build. Instead of chasing headlines, they have consistently made quiet, calculated moves. Duren arriving through that same approach is another example of it. But now the coaching staff has to adjust. The Knicks spent the offseason preparing their sets around the roster they had, and with training camp underway and preseason approaching, adding Duren means some of that work has to be reconsidered quickly. There's also an obvious twist to Duren's situation. He wanted a long-term future with Detroit, the team that drafted him, and now he's joining the team that eliminated Detroit's Eastern Conference competition on the way to winning the championship. That's a completely different environment from what he experienced during Detroit's rebuild. Duren has also never been someone who publicly airs his frustrations, even when he would have reason to. So the expectation is that he'll handle this privately, arrive at New York's training camp, and focus on doing his job. For the Knicks, this move is also about protecting the championship run from the wear of another long regular season and playoff push. Adding an efficient rim runner behind Towns gives them another option up front and more insurance over the course of the season. And that's the bigger value of the move, strengthening the roster before the pressure of defending the title really begins.
Duren can also give Mike Brown matchup-specific minutes behind Towns, especially during back-to-backs or against front courts that require a different interior presence. That gives Brown more ways to manage Towns' workload without completely changing the team's defensive structure. But this move wasn't free. Adding significant salary to an already expensive championship roster creates another financial challenge, especially with James Dolan wanting to avoid the second luxury tax apron. So the Knicks had to make real sacrifices elsewhere to fit the deal. And there's still a chance the fit doesn't immediately click. Adding a young player to an established championship rotation doesn't automatically guarantee seamless chemistry, even when the talent looks good on paper. For OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, though, having more rim protection and rebounding behind them could allow both wings to pressure the perimeter more aggressively. They can gamble more knowing there's legitimate interior protection behind them. And beyond this season, the trade says something about how New York wants to operate. They won the championship and still quietly looked for ways to improve. That's the mindset of a front office that isn't satisfied with one successful run and wants to keep maximizing the roster. Duren's rough playoff showing doesn't automatically mean he's destined to struggle every postseason. Young centers have had inconsistent early playoff runs before, becoming dependable performers with more experience. And New York's coaching staff just proved it can develop players within a structured championship system. From Detroit's side, the move also solved a real roster problem. If Duren had returned, the Pistons reportedly would have had 16 players on standard contracts, creating another difficult decision for the front office. Trading him helps clear that issue while also giving Detroit more flexibility around Ausar Thompson's extension. For New York, the decision shows they weren't interested in simply standing still after winning the championship. They could have kept the roster intact and trusted continuity, but instead, they quietly added a young center they believe can help. Still, there are obvious things that need to work for this trade to pay off. Duren has to adjust to a new system quickly, overcome his playoff concerns, and earn minutes behind an established championship starter. And there's another side to this that matters. Cade Cunningham is now losing his primary frontcourt partner in Detroit. Cade Cunningham and Duren had developed real chemistry over multiple seasons, including Detroit's 60-win year. So losing that partnership this late in the offseason creates another adjustment for Cunningham. Detroit's fans are also dealing with a difficult reality after watching Duren develop from a raw rookie into an all-NBA caliber center over 4 seasons. He helped the Pistons reach their best regular season in more than a decade, and now he's gone because of an internal decision most fans didn't fully see coming. The timing also mattered. With Duren's October 1st deadline to accept his qualifying offer approaching and training camp already underway, both sides had reasons to get the situation resolved before it became an even bigger distraction. For the Eastern Conference, New York just added meaningful frontcourt depth to an already championship-level roster. That gives every other contender another reason to pay attention as the Knicks begin defending their title. And for Duren personally, this is a major change. He reportedly wanted to stay in Detroit long-term, but now he has to build that same trust in New York while entering a completely different environment with immediate championship expectations. That also puts pressure on Mike Brown's staff to get him integrated quickly with the season and title defense approaching.